Here we are again, boys and girls. We are continuing to focus on Peter and Grandpa Jack and their beliefs today as we launch into another reading of The War with Grandpa. So we have learned so much about how Grandpa and Peter are different and why they're different. In our last chapter that we read, we learned that Grandpa's experiences and his knowledge about the country and what war really is has really framed how he thinks about the world and what he knows war to be. And when we look at the chart we created last time, we got this far, as far as the chart you're looking at. And we're going to add on to that today as we read. So we have started this chart before, then we went into our T-chart where we compared and contrasted Grandpa and Peter, and now we're back to adding into our beliefs to see if we can start creating what's called a line of thinking, where we really start learning more about the characters and where the author is taking us on our journey through this story together. So I hope you have your book. We are starting right here on Chapter 20, which is on page 64. I'll slide it up so you can see it there, page 64. And we're going to read this together. You can follow along or you can follow in your book, either way. Remember, when we're charting, you need to have your notebook ready, which you've started. It looks like this, okay? And so you should have one that already says character beliefs at the top, and you are going to continue your work with charting character beliefs. Okay, as we usually do when we read, I modeled using a thinking stem to help talk us through and help guide our thinking about the text. And as we start to look for the theme, we are going to use the stem. When the book said blank, I was thinking that Peter or Grandpa believes blank. This helps me understand. Okay. Other thing that we should quick review is we have talked about the word war and what Peter's calling war. And then we have this continuum going where Peter has been doing some pranks, okay, to kind of mess with Grandpa, right? And Grandpa's not falling for that, okay? He knew that Peter had done the clock, right? And then we talked about if a prank is like a low-level little attack, right? And war is very life-changing and very drastic and very scary and harmful, okay? Then we chatted in small group a little bit about sometimes we have disagreements, okay? And if we look at this word in the middle of it, we can see the word agree, okay? There's agree, which means we have the same ideas and we think the same thing. We certainly have a similar belief system when we agree, okay? We have the same view, okay? And of course, when we add dis, all right, it means not. So now it's not agree. And when we add meant, that makes the word a noun, okay? So a disagreement is when two people do not have the same viewpoint. And that's where we're taking off here. We are thinking about these words and the beliefs that Peter and Grandpa have about war and what that tells us about their character, okay? A slippery customer. What I did was steal Grandpa's slippers. Oh, stealing Grandpa's slippers. He's not talking to him. It's not really a disagreement. At this stage, I think this is more of a prank. After dinner, on my way upstairs, I just stopped by my old room and I took Grandpa's slippers from the bottom of the closet. I left a little note too. This one was written in magic marker on a sheet of notepaper. It said, I will not be defeated, but you will, the secret warrior. I had thought of doing some other tricky things to Grandpa, like putting a frog in his bed or a gerbil. And then I thought maybe the surprise would really get him scared and maybe even give him a heart attack. Again, those things sound like pranks. That can happen to people, especially old people. They get a nasty shock and bingo, heart attack city. I was at war with Grandpa, but I didn't want to kill him. I went to bed thinking about all of that. But before I fell asleep, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, real slow and limpy footsteps. Grandpa came in and snapped the overhead light on. Okay, he said gruffly, where are my slippers? What slippers? I say. The ones you stole, Petey boy. Before I could answer, he went over to my closet and he opened it. There were his slippers in plain sight, right where yours truly was dumb enough to leave them. My, what have we here? Grandpa said. Looks like somebody's slippers. He picked them up and looked at me, shaking his head a little, like he was disappointed. Are we finished with the sneaky tricks now? He asked. I didn't answer. I think you're one slippery customer. Or wait, you think you're one slippery customer, don't you? He said. Lots of tricks. Not tricks, I said. Oh no, what would you call stealing my slippers then? Guerrilla warfare. So I think on this one here that says prank, we could also add, it sounds like Grandpa thinks that the pranks are I just added to this. It could be a prank, or Grandpa calls them tricks, like stealing his slippers. So we're going to keep that in our mind too. But what does Peter think? Peter calls it guerrilla warfare. Grandpa looked at me, then he began to laugh. That really annoyed me. Here I was. Oh, excuse me, guys. Here I was in the middle of a war, and my enemy was laughing at me. I don't think it's so funny, I said. Funnier than you think, Grandpa said. Guerrilla warfare, ha. Monkey shines would be more like it. You've got your slippers, I said. You can go now. Petey, we've got to get this settled between us. Tomorrow, maybe. You go to sleep now, okay? But tomorrow we talk. He leaned down over my bed and gave me a dry kiss on my forehead. Good night, he said. Good night, I said back to him. I wanted to say more, like I was sorry, but I didn't. A war is a war, I thought, and it does not end until one party surrenders. So remember, surrenders is the other party gives up. So when the book said that a war is a war, I thought, and does not end until one party surrenders, I was thinking that this is what Peter believes. He really believes that this disagreement is going to be resolved when somebody gives in, when somebody surrenders. Okay, this helps me understand that oh my goodness, Peter and Grandpa are not in the same place. They do not feel the same way about how this is going. Grandpa says he wants it to be over, but Peter is waiting for surrender. Pause the video, record this in your character beliefs chart. Guerrilla warfare, he said on the way out of my room. When he closed the door, he was chuckling to himself. It was then I began to think that I would probably lose the war. Grandpa was so nice. He would just ignore everything I did. And in the end, he would stay in my room. I would be stuck up here forever. Some war this is, I thought. My enemy just kissed me good night. All right, we are going to continue right into chapter 21. That's very revealing, you know, Steve was saying as we walked to the store. He actually kissed you? Yes, I said. It's psychological warfare, Steve said, and very clever of him. He's messing with your mind, Billy said. We were on our way to Dealtown, the store where we always bought school supplies. Steve needed more pens, index cards, and a notebook. I never knew a kid who used up so many school supplies as Steve did, or who loved school as much as he did. It was a little unnatural, if you ask me. I mean, school is okay, and besides, you have to go. But I always think that a few more holidays during the year wouldn't hurt anything. Steve thinks that a day without school is a rotten day. He's always reading books and taking notes on index cards. Whenever he sees a new word, he looks it up in the dictionary, writes it on an index card, and memorizes it. Grandpa is trying to out-nice you, Steve said. But he is nice, I say. There you are, Steve said. He's got you believing it already. Wait a minute, I said. Something's wrong here. Yeah, you are, Billy said. It's very simple, said Steve as we entered the store. You start a war. Grandpa doesn't want to fight, so he just tries to be so darn nice to you that you'll forget the whole thing and call off the war. Isn't that it? No, I said. He's just a good, sweet man who loves me a lot. So he forgave me for stealing his slippers and let me know by kissing me goodnight. That wasn't too bright, leaving his slippers in your closet, Billy said. You should have thrown them in the trash. I'd never do that, I said. Or burned them. You can't burn slippers, I said. Positively Machiavellian, Steve said. But he picked up a shopping basket. What's Machia? What you said, Billy asked. Machiavelli. He was this old Italian prince, Steve said. He figured out all the moves you can make on an enemy a long time ago. I bet your grandpa knows all of them. Steve put a spiral-bound notepad and a pack of index cards into the basket. He's not that way, I protested. Grandpa is just a great guy. That's all. Steve gave me one of those all-knowing looks of his, as if he were talking to a bird brain. Never underestimate your enemy, he said. I have to say this about my friend Steve. Sometimes, for a guy who is a great brain and all, he can be very dumb. Ooh, so what are you going to do next? Billy asked. Probably nothing, Steve said. You're both wrong, I said. I'll do something. I still want my room back. Can you put a lock on the door so he can't get in? Billy wanted to know. No, I said. Steve took a 10-pack of ballpoint pens and put it into his basket. I'll tell you what I think, he said. I think the war is over, and you've lost. Okay, hope you're stopping and thinking about that. We're not writing anything else yet. We're going to keep reading. Chapter 22. When I came out on the porch after lunch, Grandpa was waiting. Let's meander, he said to me. I figure we have some talking to do. What about your leg? Well, Grandpa said, it's still attached to my body. I mean, doesn't it hurt when you walk a lot? Petey, he said, it hurts when I walk and also when I don't walk. So maybe I ought to get some exercise and the heck with my leg. We began to walk toward Beverly Road, the shopping street a few blocks away. Is this a flag of truce? I asked. Oh, there you go with that war business again, Grandpa said. Forget that. I'm not forgetting, I said. I declared war on you, and I mean it. Pish-tosh, Grandpa said. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I kind of got the idea. This isn't a war, he said. It's a disagreement. We've talked about that word several times too. Okay, and then today we are hearing it in the text again. Maybe even a dispute. And what you're doing is starting a family feud. Ooh. It is to a war, I insisted. You moved in and you took over my territory, didn't you? Isn't that what wars are about? No, said Grandpa. Wars are about power and greed. Okay. Wars are about power and greed. When the book said wars are about power and greed, I was thinking that Grandpa Jack believes that wars are serious business. Okay. And this helps me understand that, once again, Grandpa's view of war and Peter's are two entirely different things. Okay. So we're going to add that onto Grandpa Jack here, is that, we already had this one done. going to war with Peter's the wrong thing to do. And now we're down to wars are about power and greed, which we just finished reading. So you're going to pause and add that to your chart. We're going to keep reading. And getting back what's yours, I said. Grandpa stopped walking and I stopped too. His eyes seemed hard and cold when they looked at me. So you think war's perfectly okay, he said. Is that about it? Sometimes, I said. Like when? When you have to stick up for your rights, I said. Oh, interesting. Grandpa's mouth made a thin little line as he shook his head. Here's where they disagree again, so they're different. That's wrong, Petey. There are lots of ways of settling arguments without going to war. Peaceful ways. I tried that with my parents. It didn't work. That's why I had to go to war with you. Wrong, Grandpa said. Not wrong, I said back to him. You took my room. Listen, Pete, Grandpa said slowly. The only time you have to fight a war is when someone attacks you. Then and only then you have a right to defend yourself. You got that? Ooh, that seems like a big difference. Grandpa says war, when you have the right to defend yourself, is when someone attacks you. Oh, my goodness. And Peter is back in thinking that war is okay when you're sticking up for your rights. Let's keep reading. You guys can pause and write this one down. I thought about that for no more than a second. Wasn't I attacked? I said. Didn't they yank me out of my room and shove me away upstairs like I was some old chair or something? Grandpa sighed and looked away for a minute. I could see he was upset. It's just like Risk, the game, I said. Someone invades your territory and you zap them. I felt Grandpa's bony hand on my arm. War is no game, Petey. Only kids and fools and generals think that. Ooh, that's pretty serious. Kids and fools and generals. Then Petey talks back again. You're my enemy, I said in a loud voice, and I want what's mine. I shook his hand off my arm. You marched in here like an army and kicked me out of... Whack! Oh, Grandpa's right hand came whipping out of nowhere and slapped me hard across the cheek. I was so shocked and surprised, I couldn't say anything. My cheek felt hot and burning. It hurt. Why did you hit me? I said. I had tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry. War hurts, Grandpa said. War wounds and kills and causes misery. Only a fool wants war. I stared into Grandpa's brown eyes that looked so mean to me now. I won't forget this, I said. That's the idea, said Grandpa. And I won't forgive it either. From now on, we're really at war. I turned away. I started back to the house, walking as fast as I could. I left Grandpa on the street, calling my name. Ooh, that's a rough one. That is a really rough chapter. Again, Grandpa's trying to make a point. They have very different beliefs, and Grandpa has been to war. And so when we know that Grandpa's beliefs are that you don't go to war against your family, disagreements can be resolved through talking, and he believes that going to war with Peter is the wrong thing to do. He also knows about wars, that they are about power and greed. Again, you don't go to war with your family. And then lastly, what Grandpa just said that tells us a lot. War hurts, war wounds and kills and causes misery. Only a fool wants war. And let's note that on page 74. That's pretty important. That's what we just read. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that. Make sure you include the page number. So as I'm going to move this up a little. There you go. So as we close the day today, it's really important that you think about the text, okay? That you think about the characters, how they believe, and how that contributes to their actions in the story. The things that each character believes are very different in this story. And so, and part of it comes from age and experience, okay? Grandpa knows that war hurts, war wounds and kills and causes misery. Only a fool wants war. Okay, so complete your character beliefs chart, okay? And go ahead and upload that to Seesaw so I can see that you did the work. And as you're writing each idea down, that's how you engage with the text and keep thinking about what you have learned about Peter and Grandpa and the struggles that they're going through. And in your mind, start really thinking about the differences and also about the differences between war, pranks, tricks, like Grandpa calls them, and the vocabulary word we've been learning about, disagreement. They don't agree, but Grandpa surely believes that this should not be a war. Thank you. We will see you next time. Read on.